Welcome back to the Student Hub Live. This session deals with whether or not academics can make a scholarly use of social media. So I have some serious academics for you, and I can welcome Azumah and Alison back to the studio today. We have some widgets that we'd like you to vote on, so 3 words to describe your identity, what's your work setting, and some multi-choice questions. Right, yes or no, can serious academics make scholarly use of Facebook and Twitter? Which social media platforms do you currently use? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp or other? And how many hours a day do you spend on social media? And there are a range of choices there. Now, to vote on those, you just press the one that you'd like to select, choose the item that applies to you and return the result. And then you can see what other people at home are saying also. For the word clouds, you need to put 3 things in, and we keep clearing those down because there are different people in various sessions. So do put 3 words in there. If you can't think of 3, just add 1 or 2. But you need to put a full stop so that there's something in each box so that your results can submit. Now, we've spoken today, Alison and Azumah, at various points about the importance of community and peer-to-peer learning and how important this is at postgraduate level, because whilst community is really important in all areas of study, at postgraduate level there's something a little bit different about needing our peers around us. And Jane was talking a little bit more about this wiki that they were doing on one of the modules and about how important it is to sort of mimic real, scholarly communities. So how does social media come into it then?
Well, I mean, there's the sense of community that, as you say, we were talking about earlier, that's sort of within a course, and so that we've got things built into the course that will allow people to communicate within the course. But we're also trying to explore, and as you say, for professional uses, sort of guide people to other options. So we've got a Facebook site where perhaps Azumah will talk about later. We've got a Twitter stream, and we've got a tweet chat we want to promote for this evening, and to sort of engage with people beyond the course as well, to get people interested in the discussions we're having. And then we also are going to be guiding people to some of the professional association sites and some of the blogs and Twitter activity out there. So to, as well as having a tight community, also to sort of extend networks that will be useful way beyond the programme, hopefully.
Now, we asked our audience whether serious academics can make use of scholarly use of Facebook and Twitter. 100% of them said yes. I think realising that this wasn't a rhetorical question and we were going to explain some aspects to them. I sit in some of these conferences and everyone's on their iPads on Twitter. Everyone's, commenting on certain things. So the question is, fair enough if we can use social media, but will people have time for them? And how important is that then when you're sort of all of a sudden starting to cram and study with life and all these various other things going on and going off to the library and finding all these articles, etc. So, should people be giving up their social media or adding to it? Where's the balance?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want to encourage anybody to do something which we feel is going to distract from their formal study. So it is informal and it is social. But the point is, it allows you, I think, to talk and think and discuss with a community beyond the other students on your course. So there's a much wider scholarly academic community, other students doing MAs or people who are writing and researching around your particular area of interest, whatever it is, whether it's leadership, whether it's childhood studies, whether it's alternative education. There are other professional academics who are also likely to be certainly on Twitter or to have blogs who, if you're engaged in those networks, it gives you a chance to be having those conversations with them as well. So it gives you access to a wider community.
Now, it all sounds quite serious, and King of Procrastination, HJ, has just turned up on the chat, so I'm sure he's got some advice to share with us in terms of that. Is it serious, though? I mean, or is some of this space fun in terms of using social media to support your academic study?
Well, you can use it for both, can't you? And that's what we're exploring on the Facebook site at the moment. So, and Azumah's brilliant at this. She brings in this sort of real informal feel to it. And I'm sort of, everybody's playing. It is a new space for us all to play. And one of the things is to think about your digital identity. And one of the things is to consider whether you want to put your professional and your scholarly activity into the space where your personal social activity was. So whether to set up another page and another account, and that's what, you know, some of us have done. So to separate things out. But even in those spaces, you know, we've decided that the Facebook page is a very playful place, but it's hopefully very supportive. So the emotional side of study is something that can be very supportive. We were talking about this morning, people saying, oh, you know, my top tip is, and you go, really? Oh, that sounds great. I wouldn't have thought that was a relevant thing to be talking about. We were talking about, you had a poem about dusting, didn't you? Saying, oh, forget the dusting whilst you're studying. But that's also useful. And then there's the other side, there's the academic side, which Azumah was just sort of referring to, where you can really, in real time, engage with real people, real, you know, debates and hot topics that haven't been published yet. So they're not in the library, in the digital literature yet, but they're the academics that you've come across in the course. And they're out there, they're doing research now. And so we can talk to them and engage with the ideas in real time.
And indeed, while students may create different identities on Facebook, for example, many academics do also.
Yeah,
so you might be friends with them, you know, on one level, but they might also have a professional side, and again include things like blogs and you know, vlogs and various articles or thoughts, etc. So it's a nice way to be able to engage. If we start to sort of separate these out, bearing in mind we asked our audience at home which social media platforms they currently use. The majority, unsurprisingly, are on Facebook with 43%. 23% are on Twitter, less so with Instagram, and WhatsApp, I think, has quite a good following as well. So Facebook has one sort of context, and let's take a look at that. You've mentioned Azumah as being playful and practicing identities, I guess we could say, on the Facebook page. So what context might students find Facebook supportive for, and should they be looking at sort of following things that will help support their areas of interest?
I think that there's a really strong presence of the Open University, especially, I think, informal Open University accounts. I know from just the past few weeks of looking around on Facebook, there are several modules, for example, who have a Facebook group for students following a particular module, and if you can't find one, I think it's fairly easy to set one up, and that sort of sits slightly outside the more formal website, which means I think you have slightly different conversations. It's much easier, I think, to post images, for example. I know in the lead up to the start of term, was it Student Hub Live? That had the unboxing, with students just taking pictures of their OU materials.
And study buddies are very popular. In fact, we've got some on the board behind Zach and Lee at the moment from our Freshers Week.
Right.
Various things people have sent us in.
So those things, I think, is just another way of talking about what it is you're doing, of just getting tips from other people, just sharing your experiences, and in a sense, you know, just I think strengthening that sense of identity of yourself as being an OU student. And so I think those things they're fun. They're not desperately serious. They're fun, but hopefully they lead to other conversations. Oh, I've got that book. How are you finding it? There are times when people, for example, have read a really interesting paragraph about a particular subject and literally just taken a photograph of the page and just given their thoughts about it. So it's not too serious. It's not leading to an essay. It's not working towards a TMA, but it's talking around that subject in a way that is informal, but nonetheless, I think, reflects back on the work that you will eventually do for the module.
The sort of professional relevance.
It's
of it,
professional relevance.
And we've been feeding in things that we found from all over the Open University and other sites, but there's a lot of resources that we can feed in real time. You know, if somebody's asked a question, well, you know, how about this? Or the latest thing on the library site. They've always got activities. So just to keep, you know, those things in people's minds that might be at a timely sort of time for them to use.
Now, you've got a Twitter chat tonight, don't you? So tell us about Twitter. I mean, the 140 characters, very sharp and snappy, often with a hashtag, very popular at conferences as a way of sort of feeding in the chat and questions as people are having a dialogue at the same time as maybe a speaker is talking, or even making connections outside of that particular context with other people in their area. How would you recommend students might start engaging with Twitter? Should they be following people? Should they be looking up hashtags? Should they be tweeting at certain people?
I think they should be doing all of those things. But yes, I mean...
In moderation, when they've got time.
Well, yes, but I think that there's a really strong academic presence on Twitter. So it may well be that there are particular contemporary writers who you're noticing their names are coming up quite frequently in your literature. It could well be that that person is on Twitter, so it might well be worth looking for them. There's certainly going to be a group of people who are within your academic community, whatever it is. It's easier for me to talk about educational leadership or to talk about post-16 education, FE education. And I know, for example, with FE education, there are a group of people who work in colleges, in universities, in teacher education, who every Thursday they sit and they have a Twitter chat and they have their hashtag and they table a group of questions and they all sit and have a chat about it on Twitter on a weekly basis. On a monthly basis, BELMAS, which I know Alison is going to talk more about, but British Educational...
Leadership and Management and Administration Society.
Yeah. Okay.
See why you call it BELMAS.
Yes.
That's fine. So we'll put the link for that in the chat for BELMAS.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just the other plug for that is that it's free membership for the first year.
Oh, brilliant.
So it's really good for students starting up to see whether it is of use to them, because not only are these Twitter chats, but there's a journal that you get, a professional journal. And yeah, sorry, I'm distracting.
So if we park the idea, just for a minute, park the
yeah.
idea of the sort of content side of things and just go back to this point you were making, I think, about access, because it's incredibly rare that you get access to some of these huge names, and you can have that through Twitter.
You can have that through Twitter. I mean,
We won't all listen to you.
Yes, you can have that discussion with them. Not all the time, clearly, but they certainly will be posting, for example, they've just written something, they've just published something themselves, or they've read something that they find interesting. And I think it's you know that you're getting information which is very recent, which is very current, and is from a credible source that you can rely on. And so I think, for example, the education is somebody like Dylan William, which again, if people are doing education would mean something, but if you're not, I'm sorry, it won't. But there are really interesting people who I think it gives you an opportunity to be in conversation with them, whereas you might not otherwise have that opportunity. So I think it's worth seeking out. And there are also some very interesting blogs, but maybe you're going to talk about the blogs later on.
Well, I wanted to ask, because somebody's made a really good point about using their OU blog to demonstrate struggles and progresses, etc., because people have an OU blog. So I wonder, Lee and Zach, if you could fill us in.
Yeah, OU blogs, I mean, every student can have one of these. You can access them through Student Home. And lots of students make use of these. They blog their thoughts, their feelings, what they hope to achieve, how their studies are going. And it's not all necessarily, overly brimming with positive. It's actually about the real life challenges of studying as well. So people blog about their problems, people blog about the challenges and about how they overcome those as well. So it's a really good way of sharing that information and helping other students as well.
There's also a way to access things, because I think the student is saying that it's very important because she doesn't think she's going to be able to work outside the home. And so being able to document those struggles is, in a sense, I guess, sharing some of those advice with other students, as well as perhaps just doing something to honour your own space and your own progress to maybe reflect on as well.
Absolutely, it's a great reflection tool. I mean, not many of us keep a handwritten diary anymore, so a blog is a fantastic way of doing that and sort of interacting with other students as well.
So people can find their blogs, which again, all OU students can have. You don't have to have one though. Don't feel under any pressure to sort of engage with any more than you need to. But if you'd like to, then you can check out your student homepage and find your blog and start posting as and when you will. They're a great way to disseminate information and also a great way to feed back on things. I often read blogs. I must admit, I comment on them slightly less, but I often read the comments that people have put on them and think, gosh, again, just being able to sort of further that dialogue in a nice bite-sized chunk is a really useful thing to be able to do when you're short of time.
Yeah, and a lot of the modules have a professional development planning sort of process within them, of which this could act as a sort of learning journal, so you can be reflecting back on it. I know some of our EMA tasks, it asks you, part of the task is to reflect on your learning journey. So, these blogs are a really good sort of learning journal space. I know there are other spaces where you can think back on it, and you've recorded it at that time when it was fresh and it was real, so you can see how much progress you've made and what a difference it's making to you and your professional role as well. It's a good place to reflect on that.
I know you wanted to talk about this, so it makes sense to sort of bring it in now. But I wonder, Azumah, if you could sort of share your thoughts on the relationship between writing a blog for other people and writing a blog to actually learn something about yourself and your experience, that whole sort of iterative process of writing things and discovering things about yourself as you're beginning to communicate them.
Okay, yes. I mean, I guess there's something to say about the process of writing itself. I think that when we're students, when we're involved in, university life and so on, that we think of writing as just something that we do so that we can show what we know about the world. And I think what we would both say is that writing is an important way of helping you to think about things and helping you to work out how to phrase things and helping you to work out how you want to make connections with things. So in that sense, it helps you to produce knowledge and to generate knowledge as well as just to show it. So it's not just something that we do in order to be assessed on it. So from that point of view, I think it is really important for postgraduate students. And I would say certainly if you're doing an EdD or a PhD, I think I would almost say that a blog is almost essential. If you're doing an MA, it's a good thing to be doing and it's a helpful thing to be doing.
Would you like to add anything, Alison, about what people might use a blog for in particular? As Azumah says, if you're doing one of these EdDs or PhDs, it might be essential. What sort of things do you think people might put in their blogs and what for?
Well, and I think perhaps having a thought process, I mean, what we've been talking about, might not feel comfortable for everybody. So it is a place for you to sort of explore your digital identity. So what you're prepared to share beyond, and that's why you can have different stages of access for these blogs. You can write it for yourself and keep it for yourself, and then as you feel confident, you can open it up. Perhaps just to a closed group. You can send the link just to people that you know. So it's in a safe opening up of it. And as people give you reactions, you might start to, respond either to whether you've written about the emotional side, that might be the hardest thing to share, or whether it's the learning, the academic side, as Azumah was saying, trying to explore how you might sort of articulate these, these ideas in ways that, is this scholarly enough? Is this, okay? And get some feedback. And increase your confidence with your writing.
Because if you have those comments on the blog, then you can encourage your peers to maybe sort of share their thoughts on what you're articulating. And then that can facilitate different discussions.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can, for example, keep a blog as a reading diary. This is what I've read, this is what I've thought about it, this is how it connects to the particular work that I'm interested in doing. And if you like, if that causes you, for example, if you're doing our modules, or leadership modules, and you read something about leadership, which causes you to reflect on your own leadership style, you've got that meat in there of your own experience and your academic content, and hopefully other people will read that and be able to comment on it and exchange. I've also read this and I've interpreted it in a completely different way, and that's ideally what can happen through blogging.
So it's a very fluid format. It can be something that can be used as a very reflective piece just for yourself, can be shared with a small group of people, or can be more broad. And again, people writing those blogs may use those for those purposes, but also they might like to check out other people's blogs. Definitely. Any recommendations? I know we've got quite a few links that are on our resources page of the website. Surviving the OU is one of the blogs I think that you've recommended for students. What sort of things would be key and why are they useful?
Well, I think one of the links that I'd provided that I thought was useful, it was a summary of the best blogs to go and look for, because as you were saying, there's so many different styles of blog that if you were thinking of blogging, you'd be able to say, well, I could imagine writing something like that, but that sounds a bit too sort of. But yeah, some people are very, very generous with their innermost struggles about study, and there's so many, particularly vlogs out there, and particularly OU students who've really put their heart on the line. They've really thought through on their own journey and said, I wish I'd known this, or wish I'd done that, or really recommend this. Some very module specific or subject specific, but some of them have got real general appeal, and they obviously feel very motivated that they wish that people had had told them these things and shared these things. So they're very generously putting themselves out and creating these resources.
And often when you share them, you're reflecting on how well, you've come on, in a sense. And so it can be a really nice, positive thing for you, as well as an altruistic thing to give to other people.
And then there's the academic blogs. I mean, like Azumah was saying earlier about watching the Twitter activity and debates, you can see how academics use critique and how they develop debates. Well, it's the same with the blogs. If you look at some of the academics' blogs, or we've got, we talked about BELMAS, there's also the British Educational Research Association. They have a blog site where it's not an individual, but they sort of collect in blog posts from all of the membership, filter it a bit, and sort of, it's not got a style though, but it's very, very short, 750 words maximum sort of pieces, which have got evidence base that will take you places, which will make you think. And you can see different styles and you can engage with different debates very, very time efficiently and see how academics use them.
Okay, so we covered blogs, we covered Facebook, Twitter. What about these forum spaces? You've mentioned some of the welcome forums, and these are asynchronous, so they're less sort of action-packed at the time, unless, of course, someone happens to comment on them when you're there. But they're a sort of space where people can pose questions, and there's welcome forums often that people have been recommending students check out on. So tell us, for the new students who may not have come across a forum, what it is and what they might use them for.
Well, we've got them built into all of the modules, so they are guided, they're structured, so they'll be built into the module. Obviously there'll be the welcoming one that the tutors usually host, but so you'll be invited with a question to sort of respond, and you need to put a small post. It will often be reflecting on your own practice, so it won't be anything that you've had to study before you can respond. You can just reflect on the question from your own experience, and this is what we were talking about earlier. That puts the expertise that the students you are bringing to the course on the table, so that somebody else can go, oh yes, I've worked in that context, or I've had that experience, or mine was something, the fact that was important was different for me. So all of the activities are built in to structure around a question, to stimulate thinking, and some of them are in the whole module, some of them are in small tutor groups, which are sort of safe for smaller places. And I guess in terms of people engaging with each other asynchronously, I don't know whether we were going to have time to come on to, but places like ResearchGate and academia.edu are places where academics are putting up work either that's just been published or is in process, and you can follow academics there, you can have discussions with them asynchronously there, you can ask them for copies of their work, and there's spaces for debates as well, and access to information.
Well, I'm glad you got in there because we're nearly out of time. So thank you for filling us in. When is your Twitter chat tonight?
It's at 7:30 this evening. We're on the hashtag OUPG Induction 17.
Right,
for an hour. We'll be there for an hour.
For 1 hour. And
yeah.
Is there any point in people watching that after the event has taken place? They can still get the feed.
In fact, if you do a search on that hashtag, you'll find the discussion that we've been having for the past few weeks. Yeah. But I guess tonight is probably the last thing that we'll do.
So it's going to be more live. So if people want immediate engagement, then they can come in there. But of course, this is the great thing about Twitter, is that you can just pick it up and put it down as you will. So
perhaps we ought to just say we're going to lose the induction bit after today, and then it'll just be OUPG 17, and we'll be able to carry on the conversations, but not so focused around the induction experience.
Wonderful. Well, we put the link for the hashtag in the chat room, so you can make sure that you follow that. Well, Azumah and Alison, thank you very much for coming on today. And that's all we've got time for in the session, so I'm just going to say bye-bye to Lee and Zach.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm expecting a little bit more, to be honest. Have you had a nice time eating biscuits with everyone at home today, Lee and Zach?
Oh, we've had a fantastic time, and I can see why HJ took so many power naps last week. It's been great to see HJ on the chat room as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for feeding all those comments back in. And that's the end of the show today. So if you've missed any of the sessions, it's all available on the catch-up. You can check that out, which is livestream.com/OU Connections. We will be cutting it up and putting it on our YouTube channel very soon, though, so you can also do a search there. There's lots of other content available. So if you are new to the Open University and you want to find out about things like how the student support team works, about additional requirements, there are many, many, many sessions that you can can look at on the Student Hub Live YouTube account. So check that out and hopefully we will answer your questions. But if we don't, drop us an email, studenthub@open.ac.uk, and we'll make sure it gets to the right department and back to you. You can also subscribe to us and give us your email address and we'll let you know about future events. And there's a small feedback form. So if you'd like to tell us what you thought of the show, you can either email us or fill that little form in, and it'd be great to hear from you. We've covered an awful lot today, so I'll just remind you we've been talking about the postgraduate programme more generally, what it means to be a postgraduate student, and things that you might do in your first 4 weeks of study. We've then looked at leadership and management, inclusive practice, applied linguistics and childhood and youth. And finally ended up with today's session looking at Facebook and other forms of social media and how academics might use them to enhance their practice. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the programme. It's all from us at the Student Hub Live today. Bye for now, and do come to our events in future.